you have a very interesting relationship with money with regard to your living simply ethos, which I would love to embrace. I'm not as disciplined as you, but I would like the whole idea of going 10 days without spending any money.
I'm not disciplined, I'm just broke. No, I can be fearfully undisciplined, incredibly undisciplined, but no, it's incredibly, I mean, what I found is that part of the reason why we are unwell in the West is because we are in a constant state of agitation. We're constantly trying to acquire more. If you can step back from that and say, well, actually, I don't need more. What I have is more than enough. And wean yourself off this idea of, I'll start in a bedsit, then I'll go to one bedroom flat, then I'll go to a little semi, and then I'll end up in a castle. That's the poison. That's the illusion. Because it means we're actually not facing, individually and as a society, what is enough. What is enough for each one of us. And whilst I'm happy to accept that that's going to be slightly different, I'm not happy in any way to support this notion that we should spend our lives as human beings acquiring more just for the sake of it. We're past that now.
I agree with you entirely on that. And what troubled me when I watched the London riots recently with these children, well, some of them not such children, but these people who obviously come from compromised backgrounds where there probably is a great lack of money. And the aspiration, if you don't think beyond the aspiration that's being fed to you through the media, the aspiration is the Gucci, the Nike trainers, these, unless you've got those things, you've not arrived. If that's your preconception, because that's what aspiration is being fed to you, it's very difficult for what one could perceive as the have-nots to not feel a bit. I'm not suggesting, I'm not condoning, incidentally, any sort of rioting and people damaging other people's property. And
Sure.
Not one drop of that do I go along with. However, I think as a society we are all actually rather responsible for what happened in those days, in that these people are almost forgotten people and will be until such time as there can be a slightly different regime where the economy is concerned, where these people can be less disenfranchised than they perhaps are now and come back into society.
I would simply ask, what are they disenfranchised from? The fact that they can't go and get a Gucci bag, I would say that's part of really how successful the illusion that those things are actually valuable has been. The creation of that illusion has been immensely powerful and has been done with a great deal of pernicious skill. But really, I happen to, Christ said, Christ was always talking about those people. These were the people that he was constantly saying. It is the people without anything who stand a much better chance of actually being able to see that illusion. I think what concerned me was, by breaking into stores which had branded goods, I think what concerned me most was that they had clearly had become compromised by that illusion, and that they weren't necessarily looking at an alternative view and seeing themselves as beautiful human beings. The fact that they felt they needed this, that and the other to be beautiful, I think we're all culpable in that, because we've all bought into that ridiculous notion to one degree or another.
And still do, without, sometimes subconsciously, even though we know better, the temptation can be very great.
But I think it's very difficult for those people who have whatever it is, those people who are part of the creation of that illusion, who can go out and buy those things. I think they're in a far worse position, frankly, than the people who were smashing the windows to get them.
Inclined to agree. In your documentary, sorry, I'm just changing slightly, going back to the sort of the religious side to you. In your documentary around the world in 80 faiths, you explored the many roots of religions. Do you think ultimately all religions come back to the love of the self and love of humanity, love of environment, respect of the environment? I mean, because I just feel that's kind of got a bit lost somewhere along the line unless you follow some form of understanding of that. I think the love of your opening part to this interview where you talk about that realisation that you are loved and accepting that.
Yeah.
And I think that perhaps religion plays that role of embracing that belief very, very well. And also the respect of your environment, so you know, you take the commercial aspect out of all of this and strip it down to what it really is. Do you feel that really, for people who just poo-poo religion, perhaps if they were to understand that the message is actually, if you remove the word religion, the stigma that some people may attach to it, and just look at the whole gathering of people within a community, call it religion, call it what you like, but have that structure of self-belief, self-worth, self-esteem, and that then can flow into your environment. Do you feel that's perhaps what all religions are based on initially?
I think all religions are humanity's striving for meaning and for purpose. And if you... I look at amazement at the men and women who've taken journeys into the farthest reaches of themselves. And the desert hermits are a classic example of that. They've gone out into the furthest psychological reaches of what it is to be human. And they've come back with these incredible stories. They've come back with these incredible revelations. Are we to dismiss all of them and just say, oh, well, this is just, you know, he was starving, he wasn't thinking correctly. You know, they were compromised by that environment, this is nothing remarkable. Or are we to look at what they've discovered, what they found through history? And this journeying is still going on within our own generation. Are we to look at that and say, well, actually, I can relate to that experience? Or are we to say they're a bunch of madmen? I think we need to ask ourselves at this current point who the madmen really are.
Lots of big movements are talking about a change in global consciousness. You know, perhaps we are now operating or beginning to open our minds more and ditch all the stuff that doesn't matter and looking more sort of inward and seeing what really does matter. What's your view? Do you think there really is a shift happening? Because is it just a buzzword? Is it just something that's catchy that people are thinking, oh, you know, this is the new happening, 2012, it's all going to change, and for whatever reason. I
think we bring about our own change. I think what I find very interesting about 2012 is the fact that if everyone, or if there's a large, significant proportion of the population saying, at this point, a new consciousness is going to emerge, then essentially perhaps that belief will bring it about. Many of my friends within those movements will talk about manifesting what they need and what they want. This is a belief in simply thinking positively about something will bring it into being. So if there are 3 million people in the UK and if there are 16 million people in the United States all thinking 2012 is going to bring about this huge change in consciousness, then to a certain degree it will. And that's what I find exciting. Do we need it? Yes. Do we need to be open to the learning that's inherent within it? Yes, we do. Do the old established religions need challenging? Yes, they do. And do the politics, which essentially govern all of us, and the things that we take for granted within those systems, do they need challenging more than ever? So whichever way you look at it, something is happening. We're approaching this point where there has to be change. We simply cannot carry on being the human race that we have been. The questions we're being asked, the manner in which we might move into the future, all of this now is up for grabs. All of this is changing. And I think within the groups that are talking about this, there is a great deal of excitement about the potential of what a human being can be, that we've lived in one manner for the last 10,000 years. And if we're going to continue in that manner, then there is really no future. There is really no hope. And I believe that completely. And that requires all of us to think very differently about what being human is. And that I find tremendously exciting.
Well, I guess in the words of Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world, is applicable with what you just said there, because of this. I mean, the next question was going to go on to say, if we are all to become agents of change, where we're all having our input, I was going to really ask you what you think can help us in our endeavours to become agents of change. I mean, obviously there's the obvious thing where you just have a look at how you're living and see what little changes you can make initially.
I think the greatest change that we need to make is in our relationship, in our relationships. The greatest change that we need to make is to understand that we are not isolated little pieces of biology wandering around the planet. That first of all, we are each connected one to another by the very dint of being human, regardless of the faith we happen to hold, regardless of our skin colour. We are all human beings. And secondly, I think the most profound change we need to make is in our relationship to the planet. Are we to be despoilers, eradicators, executioners, or are we to be nurturers and guardians? We have really never consciously been nurturers and guardians. And it is this, that I think can only happen with a raising in the level of our consciousness to understand how connected we are to all the other life on this planet, and how individual and remarkable all that other life is. But we've never lived knowing that. We've never lived honouring that. If we were to do that, which I believe we will, what that will bring about in terms of how we see our own human identity will be profoundly different from the manner in which it currently is and it has been. That is the great star of the future. Whether we can take hold of it, I think over the next 50, 100 years we'll find out. But that to me is so exciting, that we might become beings of peace, beings of love for all creation. We've never done that. And we're being invited to do that now. And that, I think, perhaps is at the core of the change of consciousness, which I think people talk about, and I bluster about it and everyone else. We're all sort of, it's like electrons colliding. We don't know where it's going, but I think I get the greatest sense that if there is to be a change in consciousness, it is basically a change in our understanding of human identity and what it is to be human. And that I find tremendously exciting. Whether that is informed by Christianity, whether that is informed by Judaism, by Islam, by Buddhism, by Sufism, let's wait and see what they have to say about this, because they haven't said a great deal about it thus far.
Do you think we know intuitively? Yes. We just have forgotten?
I think we do know intuitively, and I think it is in that space where we are open and vulnerable, which I think St. Francis talks about eloquently and beautifully. where we are open and vulnerable, that these riches, to use a word that Christ uses all the time, become apparent. But they're a very different type of riches from the riches that we've all been striving for. But I would regard that striving as a very subtle process of enslavement. And I think people are waking up to the fact that actually I don't want to be enslaved by an economic system anymore. My humanity is worth so much more than that.